Dear Reddit, what kind of behavior did you think was normal because of your family? Then grew up to find out it's definitely not. My dad has bipolar disorder, and I never knew until I was an adult. That in itself is a full response to this. PSA to any parents with bipolar. Just tell your kids. Explain what's happening. Embrace therapy. Do not hide that stuff and pretend it's normal. It will F your kids up. Having your dad get so upset that he screams profanities at you, breaks a door, then gets in the car and disappears for hours, then comes back and won't talk to anybody for a day, then breaks down crying, and then wants to hug everyone and go have a nice dinner like nothing happened, is not normal. And thinking that behavior was because of something I or my siblings did wrong and not because of a disease really messed us up. I don't know how to have a healthy discussion now. This would happen and we would just move on without saying a word about it. No apology from him. My mom just told us to apologize, be on our best behavior, and act like everything was fine. Marrying cousins. This is common in Pakistan. My cousins got married to my other cousins. Even my sister got married to one of my cousins. I thought it was normal until I came to the UK and realized how weird it was. I'm the only one in my family, and my other sibling who could potentially marry outside the family. We have girlfriends, but we're too ashamed to tell them that our own sister married her cousin, and so did everyone else. It is strange, though. I don't really have any genetic defects in my family. No one has a disease as a result to inbreeding. The food we ate, or the food my grandmother would make. We were poor growing up. My grandmother doesn't know how to read or write, and my dad only went to school up to 6th grade, so he also doesn't read or write, and they both only still speak Spanish. When I was in college, I had food stamps, and would make dishes my grandmother made when I was growing up, and the other brown housemates and their parents, when they would visit, just were at awe at the food I made, and how not traditional they were. One day, I was homesick. I was many days, but this day I was really homesick and struggling financially, bad. So I made this dish my grandma made me so I can find comfort in that, and my roommate's mom had to call my grandma and ask her where she got the recipe from. And my grandma kindly laughed and told me everything she made to eat was made up. We never had enough ingredients for actual dishes because we didn't have a car and no money, ever. So I cried pretty hard and realized how poor we were because of those people around me. I realized not only did everyone around me growing up also grew up poor, so I couldn't tell if someone had more than me, but I also realized that I was super poor, but never felt like I was because that's all I ever knew until I met kids in college. Honestly, out of a senior class of 300 students, only me and 2 other girls got accepted to a 4-year, and the 3 of us managed to finish undergrad, and all 3 of us also went for our masters. Drinking and driving, and underage drinking. My dad used to drive around with a Mickey of scotch or beers for sipping all the time, and by the time I was 13, he was giving me both beer and booze along with him. It wasn't until I was an adult and realized my husband wouldn't even have a drink with dinner and then drive home that it dawned on me. I actually scoffed at him a few times before I effing got it. Also, drinking at 13, was an alcoholic by 14, and would sit at the dinner table smoking joints with my dad like it weren't no thing. I have a 14-year-old, and that literally makes my heart so sick thinking of it. So yeah, anyways, that stuff. The morbid sense of humor. My Nana died on my 18th birthday, and my dad came into my room and just said, "Well, kid, looks like you're fresh out of grandparents." His mom had just died, mind you. She was my last grandparent to die. And years later, my aunt tried to remember how old I am by going, "Okay, which year did we lose Mom again?" And just went, "Well, F you too," while my dad lost it laughing. And also, my aunt on my mom's side, my mom's sister-in-law, lost her mom fairly recently, and they were having a sale on urns, so she bought an urn for her mom and a new one for my grandmother, and texted me with a picture saying, "Gram got a new apartment." And people wonder why my sense of humor is so dark and morbid. I got it on both sides of my family. I learned that others aren't quite so cavalier about death. This one is gross, but my mom barely ever washes her hands. If she goes number 1 in the toilet, for example, she doesn't wash her hands. Only after number 2. She can clean the dog's ears with her finger, wipe them to her trousers, and then go toss a salad for the family. I've had to spend years learning how to not disgust people, and now I can't stay at my parents because they disgust me. I love them, but just find them gross. We're not a family you'd guess doesn't wash hands. Lower middle class academics. Nice house. No real chances to learn anything useful in life. No real independence. Everything I needed got taken care of, and the things I wanted but couldn't be provided by my family were just not there. Nobody told me I could just go up to a girl and ask her out. Nobody told me I could stand up to a bully. I had next to no allowance. I only realized this once renting my own apartment and started working. I'm 21, but I'm only now learning things that others learned 5-10 years ago. When I'd throw a really bad temper tantrum, they'd send me to my room and use a latch on the outside to lock me in until I calmed down. Never thought much of it till recently. My aunt did similar to my cousin. Mine is about pets. I grew up thinking everyone saw their pets as being part of their family. For instance, my entire family talks for our dogs, and we have a specific voice we use for this, as well as specific speech patterns / impediments that we feign while speaking for the dogs. Once I grew up and realized many people's pets are left outside all day and night, they don't sleep in their beds with them, etc., I was very surprised and a little sad for them. For the longest time, I thought the way my parents treated me was normal. So, a few things like being threatened with having my door removed by the hinges on a regular basis because I didn't come when called, not having access to locks, the amount of time the younger me would smack into a bathroom door because it's, locked when it's occupied, being occasionally threatened with physical violence because one parent had a bad day. Turns out, parents aren't supposed to minimize feelings or threaten to slam your head on a countertop by your hair because you can't find a can of green beans. They're not supposed to have you step in as a third parent for a younger sibling either. I casually mentioned that one example, the green bean can fiasco, to a therapist in passing. They had asked why I was so jumpy around aggressive, loud people, and I remember being genuinely confused at their horrified face. When I was young, my dad used to make me and my oldest sister, there are 3 of us, stand on the scale every day. My middle sister was always very athletic and thin, and the pride and joy of what my father pictured for a perfect daughter. Me and my oldest sister were on the heavier side, but at 14 and 9, we were not fat, now looking back. My mother did not know this was going on, but I remember she came home when my dad had my sister on the scale criticizing my sister of her weight. My mother flipped out, and about 6 to 8 months later, my parents were divorced. Looking back at these things my dad did and said, I think has absolutely affected the type of person I am today, especially with my own children. My current reality with my dad is a little rocky. We don't really communicate a whole lot because he's done some really effed up stuff that I thought everyone's parents did. Apparently not. Calling a remote control a dinger. I thought that was its real name for so many years. Constant sexualized comments by my parents, in a joking manner, but inappropriate regardless. I learned various sexual terminologies and jokes at a very young age. I knew where my parents' porn videos were kept. It was common to be driving down the road with my dad as he catcalled women, etc. Not only have I had to do a lot of work to change my own personality, as this is what I knew, and somewhere along the line I realized it was inappropriate, but I also realized that my friends weren't exposed to this, and when joking about my childhood, I'd often look up and see them become uncomfortable, which made me realize it wasn't okay. Casual racism. It wasn't uncommon for Dad to start a dinner conversation with, "I'm not a racist, but..." Seeing/speaking to your parents every day. My mom would talk to my grandparents daily. They lived on the same street as us and would look after my sister and I twice a week. I thought everyone saw their family that much. I thought that the dads did the cooking. My mom is a terrible cook, and Dad always did the cooking for us. It is probably more normal now, but the shocked looks from friends' parents when I mentioned this was insane. Now I'm older. I speak to my mom and grandma twice a week. My parents have my baby twice a week. My whole maternal family live within 5 minutes of each other. Definitely not normal, but I wouldn't change it. Dad playing the piano at 3 a.m. because that was his thinking music. We would all stick our pillows over our heads and try to go back to sleep. I thought it was normal until we got new neighbors who had young kids, and after a couple of times asking Dad not to play as it was waking up his kids, he came over and punched Dad's lights out. Dad just moved the piano to the other end of the house and kept playing. He really was a thoughtless arsehole, but we all thought it was normal. Having to have a great amount of respect for our food. If we turned away from our food, it was disrespectful. The same goes for standing up during a meal, throwing our food away, not eating quickly, or continuously talking during meals. Me and my siblings got beat for not eating our food quick enough. When I told my friends that, they looked at me like it was unusual, which it probably is. Completely cutting part of your family out. Literally haven't spoken a word to my dad's side of the family in over 10 years because he got sick of them being complete trash to him, and especially to my mother. So one day, I just never spoke to my grandmother again, and she hasn't even sent a birthday or a Christmas card since I was 10. I'm in my mid-20s now, and the only time I spoke to her was to let her know I want nothing to do with her after she sent me a friend request on Facebook a few months ago. And she refused to call me by my name and called me Mr. Insert my surname. And that's it. It'll probably be the last thing we ever say to each other. Having a conversation or a difference of opinion. Growing up, it became obvious that I never actually talked to my parents. I asked permission. They told me what to do, but we never spoke and had conversations. I was moved out in my late 20s, and it fully came to a shock to my dad, especially when I disagreed with him on something, and he tried to tell me off, and I told him that it wasn't going to happen. Having to tell people what you're doing all the time. When I was growing up, it was pretty much the norm to say something like, just going to the toilet, or just getting some food. Literally every time you left the room, you'd announce what for. I did it a few times when I got together with my ex, and she ended up flipping out at me for it, saying she didn't need to know where I was going and what I was doing every time I left the room she was in. If you've enjoyed watching/listening, I encourage you to drop a subscribe. I'm a broke college student, and I would like to be able to afford the cool cup noodles instead of the lame square ramen noodles. Have a wonderful day. And as always, make sure to drink plenty of water.